What's going on, guys? Connor Wells here. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me for another video. In this video, I'm going to be going over a few things that I've learned from podcasting. Podcasting is great. It's big and it's only going to get bigger. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. So I'm going to be going over a few of the things that I've learned whilst podcasting. So lots of people these days are starting podcasts or have thought about starting podcasts. Podcasts are great because you can basically talk about whatever you want, and you can really find and hone in on your niche. So if you want to start a podcast talking about food, if you want to start a podcast talking about cars, music, camera gear, whatever you want, politics, business, it's very, very easy to start a podcast and get one out there. One person who's very, very smart about podcasting is Gary Vaynerchuk. He years ago said and claimed that audio is the way forward. Podcasting is going to be huge, and it is. Thousands of podcasts are started every day, and there's only going to be more started in the next few months or years. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. So the first thing that I learned about sort of podcasting is embrace failures. Let's be honest, the first episode, it's like music, your first gig, your first photography job. It isn't going to go as well as you expect. It's going to have like technical flaws. It's just not going to run as smoothly. Now, the first episode of the podcast I co-hosted, a little bit of backstory, it's called Young Broke Musicians. Check it out. Be really cool to hear what you think. The first episode, it was very, very mishmash. We recorded it on 2 Rode Wireless Go's, great microphones, but I didn't have the equipment like I do now to record it up to its best quality. And we'll talk about equipment a little bit later, but I don't know if this is a failure or not, but we recorded it on 2 lavalier mics. We were both sat very, very close to each other, so the microphones I noticed were picking up a little bit of audio interference. My dog was jumping all over us, so it was very it didn't run as smoothly as the podcast used to run. And I think you can tell that from the editing. There was a lot of chopping and cutting and stuff in the edit. And, you can hear when something's edited and when something sort of runs smoothly all the way through. So the first episode is always going to be a rough one. Now, I mentioned earlier about equipment. Equipment really doesn't matter. I mean, obviously, people and audio specialists want their stuff, especially me, they want their stuff to sound as good as it can, which is why I invested in the Rodecaster Pro. Big thank you to Simon Squibb and the Good Luck Club for sponsoring the podcast for a few episodes to actually enable us to invest in the Rodecaster Pro, which is a brilliant piece of equipment. It's an all-in-one sort of platform to record and make a podcast. It's great. I'm using it now and it's brilliant. Cannot fault it. But before that, we recorded about 5 or 6 episodes with the Rode Wireless Go's. Now, they are very, very versatile microphones. They're brilliant, but probably not designed to record a podcast. But it just goes to show that with a little bit of audio editing, the audio from those can sound sort of near enough like this Rode PodMic. Great microphone. It just really goes to show that equipment shouldn't hold you back. Many people record their podcast literally just talking straight into their phone, sat on a table. Some people use it with the wired headphones. Some people use AirPods. It just goes to show that it's very, very easy to record a podcast. Next thing I learned, it's actually quite easy to distribute a podcast. Now, this segment isn't sponsored. Now, I looked around various websites and services who distribute podcasts. Some of them cost, some of them were free. The one I ended up going with was Anchor. Highly recommend it. Again, not sponsored at all, but if you do want to sponsor a video on the Connor Wells channel, that would be great. Anchor is great. It's free. There's no minimum requirements to earn money and get sponsors on Anchor. You can record a podcast straight into the Anchor app, which is an absolute game changer. It's so easy. You can edit a podcast on there. You can see all your analytics, where it's being streamed, and it's so easy to distribute a podcast. Highly recommend Anchor. I'll leave a link in the description down below. The next thing I've learned is it's actually very hard work to make a podcast. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, in the recording process of it, but it's a lot of work editing it, especially if you do a video podcast. It's a lot of work, and then when you're making trailers and content throughout the week for social media, it actually is quite hard and draining. I mean, I sort of got used to it in the end, but it is a lot of work. Sort of promoting a podcast and keeping it going, really. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. Don't let that put you off, though. don't let that put you off. Going from hard to easy, it's actually very easy to get content from a podcast. There's so many platforms like Wave, which allows you to have those animated waveform templates when you're releasing audio. So I'll take like a 30-second clip from a podcast and put it into Wave and make a brilliant wave generating waveform to stick on social media, on Instagram stories, Twitter and Facebook. It's brilliant. I highly recommend it. I'll leave my link down in the description below. It's a affiliate link, transparency of course, but I highly recommend it. The next bit of advice is network. It's great to network with other podcasters and people who want to start a podcast, maybe someone who doesn't have the equipment or the bravery to start a podcast, because it can be quite scary, especially if you're talking about something that's quite personal to you. Network with other people who may have a podcast or may want to start a podcast. Get them on the show. It's a great idea to collaborate. One of the biggest guests we had on the podcast was someone called Kerry Ellis. She was in the show Wicked, Cats, Miss Saigon, Les Mis, notably as well. She's performed an entire world tour with Brian May from Queen, recorded an album with him. Amazing singer, absolutely amazing singer and lovely person. She was sort of networking with the Young Broke Musicians podcast. I was scrolling through our Instagram and noticed that someone had tagged us in a post, and it was Kerry Ellis. I DM'd her and got chatting, and she came on our show, and it was a really, really great episode. We talked so much about musical theatre and the world right now for music, and it just goes to show how important it is to network, because you don't know what opportunities could arise from that. Next thing is real people with real stories make great content. It's really, really good to have. If you're doing a one-person show, it's really, really great. If people are drawn to your personality, then people will listen to that. But if you don't feel as confident to just have a show on your own, it's great to have guests, because one, you're reaching a new audience, and two, I think the listeners will enjoy it far more. If you're going back and forth, there's a different energy when you have a guest on the show. So we've had many guests from like Lee Smith, we've had Kerry Ellis, of course, Zoe Burkett, Georgia Nevada, Sophie Rose Middleton, and the people from Bamboo Brush. Amazing guests. So thank you to them if they're watching this, for coming on the podcast. But it flows a lot better and smoother when you have guests, because you're just bouncing off a few people's energies, and that's great. And if they have a story to tell or something to promote, it's even better as well. Another benefit to having guests on the show is you reach a completely new audience. If it's just you or you and your co-host, it's very, very limiting how much of an audience you reach. There's only so much audience you can reach with that. But if you have a guest, they're inclined to share the podcast as well with their audience, bringing more people to listen to your podcast, which at the end of the day is great, because you want people to listen to your show. My last bit of advice and things that I've learned from podcasting is it's a lot of fun, and just have fun. Yes, it's a lot of work to go into podcasting. It's not as simple as just pressing record on your phone and clicking send and it magically appears on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. There is a lot of work to go into it. But to be fair, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I want everything to look and sound great. So that's partly my fault, but it is a lot of work, but it's worth it. Without a doubt, it's worth it. It's the podcasting community is so friendly. On our Instagram page, we've got a good handful of people who regularly listen to the podcast, who regularly share it, who regularly comment on the posts and on Facebook as well. It's very much a community, and podcasting is only going to get bigger and better, particularly with the likes of Spotify, who are buying podcasts pretty much every day. They've obviously secured a deal with Joe Rogan, and they've just recently done a deal with Jack Mate's Happy Hour, which is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. Really, really great show. Podcasting is only going to get bigger, and Spotify are investing in podcasts heavily. So, I'd say now is the time to start a podcast. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got some value from it. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button and let me know what you think in the comments below. And sort of question of the day, if you were going to start a podcast, what would your podcast be about? All podcasts are different. It's a unique world out there with podcasts. There's so much variety. So let me know in the comments below, what would your podcast be about? Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.